If you're not a regular consumer of Fox News, you probably have no idea where the fuck Pete Hegseth came from and why he's being nominated as the next Secretary of Defense. Well, this is a man who has unfortunately been part of my life for the last decade and a half plus. I'm going to give you a little bit of a primer. We're also going to talk about the failures of the left and why there is no Pete Hegseth on the left. Why there is no prominent post 9/11 veteran who speaks for progressive values that is widely known to the general public and not relegated to a kind of like pretty small niche audience of veterans. And the answer to that is the Koch brothers. Pete Hegseth is a part-time soldier, and he is deployed to Iraq, Afghanistan. He's also been a guard at Guantanamo Bay, and he only recently separated from the military. While lots of the news media are talking about his extremist tattoos, it seems like a lot of the media who are covering this type of thing haven't taken the time to read the racist stuff he's got all over his books. Pete Hegseth rose to national prominence as a leader of a group called Vets for Freedom, which eventually became the group called Concerned Veterans for America. Now, this dark money group that doesn't have to reveal any of its donors or supporters has been working since it was created to destroy the Department of Veterans Affairs and take away the source of health care that the vast majority of veterans in this country use and are extremely happy with. I am one of those veterans. I've gotten 100% of all of my health care since 2007 when I got out of the Army from the VA. I live in New York, came from a union family. I know what good healthcare benefits look like. And I can tell you that my healthcare is far better than any civilian I know. I don't have to wait for appointments. And I don't pay anything out of pocket because I am a service-disabled combat veteran. Now, most Americans don't really think about this, but the Department of Veterans Affairs is the second largest department in the United States behind only the Department of Defense, both in terms of budget and in terms of personnel. And that is because it is the largest healthcare system in this country. And it's also responsible for not just providing healthcare, but also compensating veterans for the wounds of war and the wear and tear that military service puts on their bodies, even in training. Everyone I know who jumped out of a plane for a living, even for just a couple of years, their ankles, knees, hips, and back are destroyed. That's what veterans' disability compensation is all about. Now, in the early days of the post 9/11 generation, in around 2006, 7, 8, when the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan started to become unpopular and American sentiment started switching against them, there arose two groups of veterans. There was the anti-war side, vets who had served overseas, like me, who were pissed off that we feel like we were lied into war, especially Iraq. And then there were guys like Pete Hegseth and Vets for Freedom. These were these kind of religious zealots, people who looked at the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan as a crusade, a Christian crusade against Islam, not as a war on terror, but as a war against Muslim people and Muslim countries. These two different groups of veterans went on two different paths. One, the anti-war veterans went down the nonprofit route. We were performing a public good by educating the country on the horrors of war and the true costs of war, not just in terms of taxpayer dollars being spent, but in terms of the long-term costs, loss of life, loss of health, and things like moral injuries from having witnessed or engaged in things that violate our core principles. That is what always happens as part of war. These nonprofit veterans, myself included, have spent the last 2 decades kind of scraping by. Even when I was working as a professional lobbyist at a major veteran service organization that represented over 90,000 Vietnam veterans, working on their policy and government affairs staff, I was earning a pittance compared to your average lobbyist. And that sacrifice on income was a choice that I made because I supported the mission. I wanted to continue my service to my country and help other veterans, service members, and military families. But on this pro-war, rabidly bigoted side, where Pete Hegseth came from, they found a lucrative business model, and that was toxic masculinity. wrapped up in the American flag and covered with black rifles. And this is the time when Facebook was kind of a brand new thing. And as we all know by now, the key to Facebook and the rest of these social media apps, like the one that I'm posting on right now, is they want to keep you engaged, because that's how they get you in front of ads, and that's how they make money. And a fact of life is that engaging in toxic masculinity and being a bigot on social media gets you a lot of attention, a lot of likes, a lot of shares, a lot of outrage. Doing things like fighting for healthcare for veterans doesn't attract the same attention. This right-wing veteran influencer group just kind of took off, and they started making a ton of money. And because of their connections to stuff like the Koch brothers, and because they were selling bigotry and racism, they had a really easy time getting on Fox News, which, of course, increased their revenue. While the anti-war, pro-healthcare vets have basically been starving for the last 15 years, the bigots and hate mongers who built a career on drumming up outrage against our healthcare system, they started to become millionaires. And Pete Hegseth, looking the way that he does, and spouting anti-Muslim bigotry, became a frequent guest on Fox News. His segments did really well, so well that he was offered a job. That's the very short version of where Pete Hegseth came from. How he got in front of Donald Trump, because Donald Trump just watches television all day, and why he is being nominated by Trump. That's all I could squeeze into a TikTok video. But in the comments below, I'm going to drop a New York Times article from 2018 that gives the story behind Concerned Veterans for America, the Koch-funded dark money group that made an investment in veteran personalities 20 years ago, which has resulted in this toxic masculinity vet bro commercial sphere. And it's how a completely unqualified part-time soldier was set on the path to becoming the next Secretary of Defense.